Welcome back, Fiat fans. So today we're going to be working on this 2018 500 Abarth here. And speaking of fans, it's hot as hell in here, so there's going to be air conditioners running and fans running, and I apologize for the noise, but I'll just try to talk over them and hopefully you can still understand me. And oh, check out this spicy 500 t-shirt, huh? Yeah, you know you want one of those. You know where to get it, right down below. But anyway, we're going to be doing the timing belt and spark plug tube seals on this car. So let's get to it. All right, so the first thing I did was get the car off the ground, take the wheels off, and next I'm going to remove the battery because we're going to be working in here. And I'm also going to remove this nice aftermarket intake. And if you have the stock air box, that's going to come out too. So we'll do that. Get the battery out. It's just this one bolt right here holding it in. I think it's a 13. And the air intake, it unclips from right here. I might undo this part too. I don't know. We'll see. But it unclips from there. It's got a bolt right in here and a bolt right here, and of course it comes off of the turbo. All right, now we need to get the air oil separator off, and it's just these 3 bolts like right here. I believe they're 10 millimeters, and remove these hoses and it pops right off. Now if you haven't serviced your air oil separator in a while, now would be a good time to do it. You know, replace this PVC valve right here. They're only like 30 bucks or so. And then also there's a little O-ring that goes on right down here. A lot of times, like, you'll find that O-ring is just dry and brittle, and your air oil separator is leaking oil down onto your valve cover. But the owner of this car recently did that, so we're just gonna set this aside for right now. All right, next up I'm gonna take the coil packs off. These are 10 millimeter bolts, just holding those in. I'll also remove the 10 millimeter bolts holding this little breakout box on. And then we gotta start taking some of these brackets off. We gotta take this one off, that one off, and also we have to take off the turbo bracket as well. And these are 13 millimeter. So this little bracket right here, you have to unclip from the fuel rail, that little round clip right there. And the backside has a little nut, kind of hard to see. I just screwed it back on its stud, but that's from the backside of that. This bracket right here has 2 nuts, like in the backside, and there's several little things that are connected to it. You just kind of have to lift them up off the studs. You see the studs there. I lift it up and just kind of push it out of the way. Everything moves a little bit. Then we need to get the bracket for the air oil separator off, and it's got 1 bolt here, another bolt kind of down there in the darkness, and then this nut right here. And anytime you encounter any of these little connectors like on a bracket, you can usually pop them off without any problem. For example, we gotta come over here to the top timing belt cover, pop this guy off. We're also gonna have to remove the Petersburg valve down in here, the boost solenoid. We don't actually need to disconnect it, just remove that bolt, and so we can move it out of the way. The timing belt cover's bolt is kind of right behind it, and then the timing belt cover has another bolt just right over here. So I want to point out that there's 12 8 millimeter bolts that go around the valve cover, and there's one down in here that was kind of hidden. It was covered with a bunch of dirt and stuff. I had to use my blowgun to blast all the dirt out of there before I could even get to the bolt. But even after getting all the bolts out, it can be a little stuck, so you have to just kind of like wiggle it, and eventually it pops out of there. Now, even though your valve cover has a gasket that goes all the way around, they actually add RTV in some key spots around the head to kind of seal things in a little bit. And what you're going to want to do before you put it back together is take a little plastic scraper or something and dig all this old RTV off. And of course, here's your camshaft and your multi-air brake if you're ever curious of what they look like. Now, taking the spark plug tube seals out is pretty straightforward. You just have to get under the edge of the lip of one and start prying up slightly. It'll be real gentle with, you know, a metal tool like this, because you don't want to scratch anything up. I tried to get under it with the plastic tools, and these just aren't really sharp enough to get underneath. Like, maybe once you get it started with the little thin screwdriver, you can get them to go. But yeah, just work it around and eventually it'll pop off. I already took this one off. This is the one that was leaking over here, and if you can see, it's got tons of crud on it. I don't know which came first, the crud making it leak, or maybe the crud is from the leak, because it looks kind of like it has some sand or something in there too. Pretty nasty. But once you get them removed, you definitely want to clean out the holes really good before you put the new ones in. Get all like crud out. Set the camera down so I can get two hands on this guy. Yeah, it just lifts out just like that. I'll do one more for you guys from scratch. Just get underneath the edge like that. Yeah, you can tell these seals are kind of coming apart. Definitely time to change it. I already cleaned up around the groove for the gasket really well too. I just took a rag and shoved down in there and wiped all the way around the perimeter. But yeah, let's get this thing cleaned back up and get the new ones installed. Installing the new seals is pretty straightforward. You want to take your new seal and put just a little bit of oil on it. I'm using some assembly lube. That's probably actually too much. Get that smeared all the way around. And then you want to line up the notch, of course, like with this little circular part. And then once you get it kind of started, then take you a nylon mallet and tap it in. You just want to make sure it's fully seated there. You want to lube up this one over here too. They kind of want to pop back out until you get them seated all the way. And now here the fun starts. In this gigantic package here, wadded up in the corner, is the gasket. And you know, this is how Mopar sends them. I don't know why they put them in such a huge package that they just wad them up in the corner, but that's what it is. And after a few seconds of fiddling with it, you can kind of guess where it goes. Circular parts, it has like these little nubs. The nubs go into a little recess right there. And it's the same on this side too, so you can kind of tell how it's doing. And you just kind of work it around, work it down. So now you have to run a bead over both the cam humps and where it comes up over the, making an elevation change for the multi-air brick, and basically just everywhere it makes a turn. Once you get all the bolts in, you'll just want to hand tighten them and go in like a zigzag pattern. I think the manual actually says start with this one, then go to this one, and then that one, and that one, and then this one, and that one, and that one, and this one. Hey, you get the idea. But first you just want to hand tighten them just until you feel it stop like hand tightening. And then you gotta give the sealant that you put down an hour to set, and then you can come back and give them their final torque to 80 inch-pounds, which is like 6.5 foot-pounds or something. So it's not a lot. All right, so going forward with the timing belt change, I'm gonna have to take this brace off right here so I can get this little access panel out of the fender well. And these right here are 15s, and this is just, you know, Phillips. Oh, and I've already taken the tray off the bottom too. I just want to point out something kind of ridiculous. The last screw for this piece right here is like behind the hard brake line. And it's just like, what the hell, Fiat? Come on, man. But you can kind of get around it by popping this clip out that holds the little connection here. And you can kind of wiggle this down and around and pull it out of the way. And I was actually able to get a Phillips on there like that. So that's how you got to do that. And then once this panel is removed, you have easy access to the crank. I'm going to be taking the motor mount off next, so we'll put this little trailer jack underneath the oil pan to support the motor. So I undid the nut over here and then the bolt right down here for the coolant bottle, so that after I take these 3 bolts out for the motor mount, I can just pull the coolant bottle out of the way like that and then get to the other side of the motor mount. And all of these are 15s. All right, now that the engine mount is out of the way, we're gonna have to remove the engine mount bracket from the engine also. In order to do that, we have to pick the engine up quite a bit. So we're gonna have to remove this cross brace right here, plus disconnect the lower engine mount. All right, to get the aux belt off, you have to get a wrench on the tensioner pulley, and you have to pull it counterclockwise. And when you pull it counterclockwise, it loosens up the belt. You see that? And then you can slip the belt off the pulley there. Oh, and the instructions that I've seen said that that's a 13mm bolt, but this was actually a 15. So I don't know what the deal with that is, but there you go.
Thanks, Fiat.
So on the bracket that the motor mount goes on, there's one nut down here on the bottom that you have to take off, and there's 6 of these e-torque bolts, and they're pretty darn long, and you run into a problem where they hit the side of the frame rail here, so you have to get under there and jack the engine up quite a bit in order to get the bolts out. And actually a couple of these bolts, I don't even think I'm gonna like take all the way out. As you can see, this one still kind of hits the frame rail, but it's completely loose. So I think once I take that nut off from the bottom, I can just lift this out. And then whenever I go to put it back in, I'll be sure to insert those bolts into it before sliding it down in here, but in between the frame rail and the engine. She's a tight fit. All right, with this thing out, you can see that there's a lot more room down in there now. That's way better. But here you can see the 6 bolt holes, and then also this one stud down at the bottom. So when you're lifting the engine up, I know it doesn't look like it's going to come up far enough for you to really get that thing out of there, but it does. You just have to keep gently lifting it and making sure the engine's not like snagging it somewhere. I had to give it a little push to the rear just a little bit to get it to clear over here, but you know, you just have to fiddle with it till you get it.
Now we gotta take these 3 bolts off to pull the pulley off the crankshaft. These are 13s.
And then you take the lower timing cover off. It's just held on by 1 10mm right here. And now we have to rotate the crank so that we can get our alignment tool on there.
So the alignment tool only goes on the crank one way. And it has like this little hole right here that lines up with this little nubbin. Hopefully you can see that little guy. And it fits in there like a little puzzle. And the top part of it aligns to the bolt up there.
Now that we have the crankshaft alignment tool on there, we have to make sure that the cam is aligned too. The cam could potentially be 180 degrees out, so we'll need to take the vacuum pump off, which is real easy. Just has these 3 T25 Torx on there, and then we'll be able to put the cam alignment tool on where the vacuum pump used to be. So I was mistaken a second ago when I told you T25. They're actually T45 to take the vacuum pump off. But once you have that off, you can see that the end of your camshaft here, and you see how it has a slot, and it also has like a little hole. Well, that corresponds to your alignment tool. You have the slot, and then you have this little pin, and that pin goes in the hole. Now, if your crank is aligned correctly, all you have to do is take your alignment tool and pop it in, and hopefully it lines up just like it should. Now, for some reason, the hole is on the other side of the camshaft. You got yourself 180 degrees out. So what you'll have to do is rotate the crank a whole 360 again, full turn, and then it should put that hole on that side. I just want to point out that whenever I took the vacuum pump off, some oil came out and made a little bit of a mess, so you might want to just shove a rag down here to catch whatever oil drips out from taking the vacuum pump off. But now that we have this alignment plate bolted to the back of the cam box, both our cam is locked in place, and down here our crank is locked in place. So now we can actually take the timing belt off. As you take the nut off the tensioner, you'll see that it slackens the belt just like that. But we're gonna replace the tensioner too. You always wanna do that. So go ahead and take the nut all the way off. It's a 13mm, by the way. And then the tensioner just slides right off just like that. And then your timing belt comes off easy peasy. Now this timing belt doesn't look too bad. I mean, the car is only 5 years old, but it does have 12,000 miles on it. I think it was 112, 118,000 miles, something like that. You can see just a little bit of cracking whenever you flex the belt. Yeah, there's a little bit more cracking, a little bit more cracking there. I believe this belt definitely could have gone to the 150,000 miles that you normally have to change it, but you know, better safe than sorry. Now this is your water pump right here, and while you don't have to change the water pump whenever you do the timing belt, it's one of those things where you might as well, because you've done all this work to get to the belt anyway. And if your timing belt is starting to go out, it's probably a good bet that your water pump is getting worn out too. And it's just held on by 3 10mm bolts, and then one is a nut down there too on the other side. Getting this damn water pump unstuck has been a fiasco. I was finally able to prise it loose by getting it underneath here. And of course, you know, you gotta love the grapefruit waterfall. It's So my buddy Henry said that it's actually not a good idea to pry from the bottom right there because you're pushing against the oil pump housing. You're actually supposed to pry from the top left corner, but absolutely no amount of prying was getting it to budge.
But yeah, I swear they put these freaking water pumps on with like construction adhesive or something. I've never seen a water pump so stuck as this. All right, so I scraped up the block reasonably well, get that mating surface as clean as I can.
And now I need to apply silicone all around the new water pump before putting it on.
All right, now we're gonna loosen the cam bolt. We want the cam pulley to be able to spin freely whenever we try to tension the new belt. So we got the cam pulley holder tool. These little finger thingies just go inside the holes in the front of the cam. And then the bolt itself is a 18 millimeter. Loosening this bolt right here is kind of a pain. It's 88 foot-pounds of torque. But as you can see, I got the timing belt on there. You start routing the timing belt by putting it on the crankshaft down there, then on the water pump, and then up on the cam pulley. And then the cam pulley moves just a little bit so you can get it on the tensioner. And now what we need to do, you see those two little holes in the front of the tensioner, we have to turn those until the slots line up. Now you can use snap ring pliers for that, but the crank and cam alignment kit that I have actually comes with a little spanner. So I'm gonna get that on there. And as you can see, like while I'm turning this, it's starting to tighten up the belt. And now I need to tighten up this nut to 28 foot-pounds. All right, so we got the cam pulley bolt tightened back up to 88 foot-pounds. Now it's time to undo the alignment tools from both the crank and the cam side and give her a couple of rotations and then make sure that everything is still lined up. All right, so I rotated the crank around 4 times to make sure everything was aligned, and the alignment tools went back on the way they were supposed to, so it looks like we're good to go. Now hopefully this will encourage you guys to get your hands dirty and do it yourself, or if not, find a guy like me who can help you out. But hey, if you like this sort of thing, be sure to subscribe if you aren't already, and give us a thumbs up. It really helps the channel out. Well, bye, thanks for watching. And I know what you're thinking, I gotta put all this stuff back together, but just like the manuals say, installation is the reverse of removal. Catch you guys next time.